If we do a great job taking care of each other, we'll attract wonderful employees that do a great job at taking care of our customers. And if we do a great job at taking care of our customers, they'll pay us a margin that reflects the value that we are adding to them. And that'll allow us to take care of the business. And then if we take care of the business, we can reinvest in our employees. And part of that reinvestment is we're a 30% employee-owned company. Our team members see the benefits of the contributions they make to the business because they own a piece of it. And that's just a real powerful cycle of continuous improvement. If we take care of each other, we'll take care of our customers, and the customers will take care of the business.
Welcome to Encouraging Leaders, a podcast that exists to remind CEOs and aspiring CEOs that you do not have to lead alone. I'm Mark DeBron, and today I'm joined by a dear friend and an incredible encouraging leader who's building an awesome culture here in St. Louis, Steve Gunn. Steve is the third generation CEO of a family business. They're now in their fourth generation, bringing their kids on. But their family actually extends back even beyond that, 6 generations on business ownership. They have a unique culture. They've got 30% employee ownership, which is an interesting fact. Not very many private businesses do that, go that route. And the industry leading results that the business has is phenomenal. We're going to talk about mostly culture, but I want to share with you 3 of them that just strike me. For a 75-year-old plus company, a 70-year-old company, 18% compound annual growth rate over the last 5 years, X industry average operating margin, and a 97+% on-time delivery. Steve, welcome to the show.
Wow, what an introduction, Mark. Thank you very much. Of course, you've been a big part of our journey. Years ago when we met, we engaged in some benchmarking and enjoyed very much visiting Cambridge Engineering back in the day and see how you empowered your team and through your leadership with those 1-minute improvement ideas that you all implemented out there. And if you recall, we did some sharing around Kaizen problem solving, and that was absolutely wonderful. So back in the day when we were both pursuing operational excellence for our companies, it was great to have that benchmarking with you all to see how we could get better together. So I appreciate everything that you contributed to our journey, including, if I recall, the visit by Ritsuo Shingo that you set up for us, which was outstanding back in the day.
Not everybody on the listening side knows Ritsuo Shingo. You know, he passed away, but what a man.
Yes.
What an incredible man. Past Toyota's president who came to St. Louis a couple times to visit manufacturers here. And I was sharing the other day how much of an encouragement he was to me. You know, sometimes whenever people think about encouragement, they think about cheering. But I think about Ritsuo, and he would hit me on the side of the arm and he would just be like, no, that not okay. You know, he did it 16 times in front of our teams, telling me all of the things that I had messed up as a president, showing them the things that I needed to improve. And I felt so encouraged. Sometimes leaders like me, I need a hit on the side of the head, and he was willing to give it to me to encourage me.
He definitely challenged folks to constantly rethink what they were doing and just continuously drive improvement through the organization, really in a way that emphasized listening to the folks on the shop floor and serving them, making their life easier so they could be more productive and efficient. It was a wonderful 2 days that I spent with him, and it was all because of you, pal. You shared him with me, and that was a gift, and I certainly appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate that. I think about, you know, the first question that I've been asking all of the CEOs that join us on this podcast is, you know, when was the first time you remember learning that you didn't have to lead alone?
Well, you know, Mark, you mentioned that you work with a lot of family businesses, and I think I am one of the incredibly blessed folks on the planet who not only was born into a family that loved me and encouraged me, but I had a brother, Rich, who was 5 years older than I am. And from day one, I knew that I did not have to lead alone. He was leading a path for me from the very earliest days. And I always had a mentor and a counselor and a best friend all wrapped in one. Of course, as young kids, we battle it on the athletic fields, and I lost most of those battles. He is always bigger and stronger. But, you know, when we got into the business world together, what I found was just an incredible partner. And nobody could ask for a better partner than I have in my brother. And when you talk about leading others, he's a guy who has, you know, serve others as his primary guiding light in his life. And so he is all about serving others. One of the things I love to quote about Rich is he's been given blood for probably 30 years now, and the average human being has 8 pints of blood in them, and Rich is in the neighborhood of 200 plus pints of blood he's given away. So he's
Wow.
given away literally dozens of humans worth of blood. And that's just kind of the guy he is. He's constantly giving and serving others. And so I couldn't ask for a better leader in my life and someone who has certainly never had to lead alone. So having that
Yeah.
partner in business, it's been an incredible blessing.
Because you have done multi-generational transitions, talk to me about how your dad or anybody in the past helped set the stage for being able to continue the family traditions and strengthen the business. And how did that look for you?
I think you hear about in a lot of families, we talked about the family business at dinner all the time. And you and I were talking a little bit before the call that we're a 6th-generation family business in some ways, because my great-grandfather and his brother, Al Busman, and his brothers started Busman Manufacturing, which was a large fuse manufacturing company. They started in the early 1900s. And so we heard those stories of a manufacturing business and a family business routinely. And we had, in those days when I was growing up, big family reunions. And the Busman family was a large family. They all had 6 or 8 kids, it seemed. And so I had literally dozens of cousins and lots of second cousins and so forth. And this is what we talked about. We talked about business, and we learned a lot of the lessons of both the positive things that they did well for business success. I mean, today, Busman, although we have no relationship with Busman Manufacturing anymore, it's still the world's largest manufacturer of fuses. So it was a very successful business, and we could learn a lot of positive lessons from them. But we also learned a lot of constructive lessons, things that they didn't handle so well, family relationships that didn't handle so well. And so those were all impactful lessons for our business. And so when the gun company was essentially spun out of Busman in 1951, we had a whole bunch of lessons that we had learned from the Busman family. And I think we've done a great job of being thoughtful and considerate about how we're going to avoid the problems that a lot of family businesses have. And I think we've been remarkably successful in having a business that's run very professionally that happens to have family members in it. And so not only is it gun family members, the way we look at it is we have a family of families here, the Melton family, the Moran family. We have extensive families with multiple family members working at the gun company. And I think that's really neat when other families feel so safe and secure in the business model that they can bring in their wives, sons, daughters, cousins. That's a pretty neat affirmation of the way we're running the business and take care of each other.
Yeah, I heard it in our prep conversation, the learning from the past, reflecting on history and what's worked as well as what hasn't, not being afraid of looking at the things that went well and the things that didn't, and then making decisions for the future that build on that. That's what I hear you describing.
That's exactly right. It's a big part of our culture to do what we call an after-action review. It's this constant introspection to say, hey, what did we mean to do here? How did it go? What can we do better? And I just think that's a great approach. It takes the humility to look inside yourself and admit what you've done poorly, but it can be very powerful in terms of lessons learned.
Yeah, so what do you do culturally to help people feel okay with that, making mistakes or being humble enough to admit when you're wrong or weaknesses? How do you do that at Gun Company?
It's a huge challenge, right? Because we human beings all have an ego, and nobody wants to admit that they did something of less than great craftsmanship, right? Or that they've made a poor decision, or that they don't want to be criticized. But if we can create an environment of psychological safety, because fundamentally there's this underpinning of care, there's this feeling of family and, dare I say, unconditional love. So if you feel respected, if you feel cared for, if you feel loved, dare I say, then you can be a bit more humble and a bit more introspective, and you can find it in yourself to share your mistakes and focus not on the individual issue, but focus on the system or the process that maybe created a result that we'd like to improve upon going forward. So I think that's a big challenge. We human beings are complex and challenging. But if you can create that psychological safety, then you got a shot to focus on the lesson learned. And that's a pretty
Yeah.
powerful tool for improvement.
So you have a pattern of after action review that helps to do that. How do you describe either respect or what do the values look like that lead to that psychologically safe environment for you?
That's a great question. And I give all credit to a gal who's been a very, very powerful leader for us, Connie Dooley. She's what we call our culture coach. This incredible human being worked in customer service for us for many, many years, but her calling on the weekends was to host spiritual retreats for her parishes and congregations. And she and I were having some great spiritual dialogue, and we said, wouldn't that be great if we could create a culture of development for our team members that is akin to a retreat, where someone can really focus on who they are, what they want to be, and how we can help them get there. And so really she brought together a group of our team members and came up with what are now our 8 core values. And each of those 8 core values have been defined, and then they've got a list of corresponding behaviors. And between the definitions and the examples of the behaviors and a bunch of tools we put in place to help communicate these values and demonstrate those who exemplify those behaviors, it's a very, very powerful reinforcing tool. For example, we routinely recognize and celebrate individuals who represent or demonstrate each of those core values. And that's just neat. It's a way to say, here is somebody who is living this value, and this is what great looks like. And then we can recognize and celebrate that person throughout the company. So that's one of the ways that we put those cultural values in place. And then we hold up examples of folks that live those values. And it reinforces the culture here, and it's been very powerful for us.
It's great whenever you can see the person, you can name the person, and that person is helping guide the culture. I know that you've been doing that work a lot, and so you've got a team, an individual as well as yourself working on that. I was reading through some of the materials on the pathway to get from where you were at to the results that I mentioned, and I heard something in it which said the board had asked for a higher growth rate than you were experiencing at a point in time. And then I saw some notes about culture before results. Tell me about either of those, how that challenge felt by the board, and what does it look like to build culture before results, either one of those?
It's really interesting. Historically, I think we would have said that taking care of the customer was the most important thing at the gun company. And that really drove the growth of our business from when we started. When you're a tiny company and you're trying to survive, it's all about taking care of the customer, which is absolutely critically important to us. What we did is we had what we call a 3-legged stool. It was take care of the customer, take care of each other, and then take care of the business. And we decided that we wanted to do those 3 in balance. And for many years, up until 2015, take care of each other was kind of at the top of our take care of the customer was at the top of our North Star. And in 2015, with Connie's help and the help of our team, we shifted to have take care of each other at the top of our North Star. And so one of the things as we did that, our board was challenging us. Economic growth in 2015 and 16 wasn't so great. And our board kind of pushed back a little bit and said, hey, you guys got to make sure you're growing at a healthy rate. And we kind of made the decision, no, we got to get the culture right. And we really think it's important to have a focus on taking care of each other, because if we do a great job taking care of each other, we'll attract wonderful employees that do a great job at taking care of our customers. And if we do a great job at taking care of our customers, they'll pay us a margin that reflects the value that we are adding to them. And that'll allow us to take care of the business. And if we take care of the business, we can reinvest in our employees. And part of that reinvestment is we're a 30% employee-owned company. Our team members see the benefits of the contributions they make to the business because they own a piece of it. And that's just a real powerful cycle of continuous improvement. If we take care of each other, we'll take care of our customers, and the customers will take care of the business. The business can reinvest in our folks. And that's been a really powerful model for us.
So were you a CEO in 2015 whenever the board said, I want you to grow faster than you're saying you're growing and you're currently growing?
Yeah, I was actually the president then. Yes.
So you've got a challenge from a group that's actually setting direction for you, and you push back and say, "This is the order we're going to take the business in." That's what I hear there. Is that
Yes.
accurate?
Yeah.
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 I'm not ignoring business results. I'm saying the order we're going to focus is taking care of each other first. The customers are taken care of by the people, and then the business is taken care of by that being solid. That shift sometimes can be scary. I was with a CEO friend, Gary Ridge, and he was talking about doing that at the publicly traded level where the owners are many and they're yelling
Yes.
about growth rate. And he's having to say, hey, hold on, this is the way we're going to grow. Tell me about that challenge and how did you get through it? What did it sound like? What did you do to reset expectations?
Well, it was interesting. I was really inspired by a fellow named Bob Chapman, and he's the CEO of Barry Waymiller. And I had
Mm-hmm.
heard him speak a number of times. But as you know, I was very much into benchmarking in those days in the early 2010 time period. And I was involved in what's called the Operational Excellence Association down at WashU. And so we were benchmarking manufacturers around the Midwest. And it was a great program to be involved with. But Barry Wehmiller had a program called Beyond Benchmarking, and they invited in companies and they gave a 3-day seminar, which I thought was going to be about benchmarking. But what it was
Mm-hmm.
really about was humanistic leadership. And it was about how to take care of your people and prioritizing people as a business strategy that aligned with their values. And as I heard Bob Chapman talk about it, I was absolutely inspired and said, this completely aligns with our values, the way we think about business. At that time, we had already been in ESOP for 6 or 7 years. So we very much believed in taking care of our folks. But really, what Bob Chapman taught us was to be much more intentional and articulate about how we went about building culture. And we had to convince our board that this would have financial results. But frankly, I was willing to sacrifice short term financial results for what aligned with our family values and what really drove Rich and I.
Yeah.
Frankly, we had been more successful than we ever had hoped.
Yeah.
And so we were looking for deeper meaning. And there isn't a lot of intrinsic motivation involved in making electrical insulation components. And what Bob really lit me up on was when he said that business is about growing people. They're in the business of growing people. And I was like, that resonates with me.
But the idea that you could have a purpose and meaning in your life, in your leadership of the business that had long-term potential, meaning that you could work on it for a long time and you could be proud of working on it and you could keep on pouring in more and more. Whatever you have, you would pour into it. That's what I hear behind that desire and that shift.
It was like a bolt of lightning hit me. And in fact, the
Yeah.
funny thing is, I went back to the company and I went to 3 or 4 leaders and I said, I just went to this seminar and heard all about the Bob Chapman. And I said, can 3 or 4 of you guys go to this and listen to the same thing I just heard? I don't know if I'm just crazy, if it's just me or what, but would you guys just go and double check that I'm hearing this all right? Make sure it resonates with you guys too. And holy
Yeah.
cow, they all came back on fire too. And I was like, all right, now we got it. So,
Hmm.
and of course, through Bob Chapman, we learned a lot. It wasn't just that one meeting.
Right.
He's really lit
I
us
had the
on
privilege
fire.
of traveling with Bob several times and watching him work. And the first time I traveled with him, I was just going to see if he was real, if he actually cared as much as he said he did. Because one of the things, I just want to know the human behind the flash, whatever the flash is. And he was talking about his grandkids, and we were on a boat, and he was just sharing his heart. And I was like, okay, real human, loving people. And then I'm on a plane with him and I'm watching him work, and he's working and he's opening up spreadsheets, business spreadsheets, and he's checking the P&Ls on all of the different business units. And I'm like, okay, he's got both sides of the brain moving. He cares deeply. He's got a strong heart and he has business acumen. And so I've just really, really respect the heck out of that man and watching him do what he's doing with full heart and intention. It's not easy, but he can work on it for the rest of his life, just like you can now, and just like I can, because it gives a purpose and meaning to all the things that we've experienced. So thank you for sharing that. I think about that. So let me switch gears a little bit. So building a people-centric business, you were already profitable, so you were already healthy, correct?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was no
So
break,
the
but
only thing that the board was saying is, I want you to be faster growing. And you were saying, actually, I would trade off short-term faster growth for this purpose that is bigger and deeper and meaningful. And it includes a focus on my people and building culture. Is that right?
absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And I got to tell
I
you, it worked out
Go
perfectly.
ahead. And looking
And
backward, it worked, right?
I could not have hoped for better results. But what it happened is when you focus on taking care of others and serving others, the return is more than you could ever expect. And I think that's something that applies to life in almost every endeavor. You give and you give, but you get so much more back than you ever expected. So it's almost, in being selfless, it is almost like being selfish because you get so much in return. And that's just what we realized and learned over time. And it's just very powerful.
I heard a quote the other day: "Wisdom sounds like foolishness when you're trying to say it to somebody else." And what you're describing to me, and it's beautiful. Wisdom is beautiful in teaching whenever we experience it. And so you've experienced what it feels like to actually give and give and give and get tenfold back. You've gotten more than you gave.
It's unbelievable. You know,
Unbelievable.
it's unbelievable. One of the things we also got from Bob Chapman is an introduction to Simon Sinek. And so we went through, again, with Connie Dooley's leadership, a why discovery exercise with our full team. And what they came up with was to me just incredibly inspiring. The purpose of our business is to recognize and serve others so that lives are transformed. Now, we're a manufacturer of widgets, okay? But our purpose is to recognize and serve others so that lives are transformed. Now, that's just unbelievable. That's awesome. And it's super powerful because we live it every day. We expect our leaders, as Bob Chapman would say, to exhibit what we call a parental level of care. And what does that mean? That means you look at your team members as akin to your children. And if you think about your children, what do you want for your children? You want them to become who they're meant to be based on the blessings that they've received in life. And so your job as a leader is to help others become who they are meant to be. And if you have that parental level of care and you demonstrate that parental level of care, it is outrageously powerful in terms of bringing a team together and trying to accomplish a goal, which is to transform people's lives by providing opportunities for growth and to help them become who they're meant to be.
So some people that are listening to that might trigger a little bit, because the fact is that businesses sometimes have people that are in the wrong role. They have people that are not able to perform. They have people that are. So tell me what that looks like to have that kind of attitude as a leader when the person is not in the right either role or right company. What does it look like to make decisions whenever you have a parental view of leadership and you have somebody that's not in the right spot?
Yeah, and of course, as a family, I've had to coach out my own family members. So this is something that we've had to work on quite a bit. And we call it accountability with compassion because we are still a performance organization. We still have to perform at a very, very high level for our customers. So we're looking for 99th percentile performance out of our team. And of course, not everybody is prepared to perform at that level. So we have what are called individual development plans. And what that is a quarterly meeting with each of our team members where we talk through introspectively where an individual is with living our values. That alone is a pretty challenging conversation. We're not giving people necessarily feedback. We're asking how they think they're doing introspectively and for them to share how they think that they're doing. And so really, if we can just get them to think and be introspective, that alone is pretty powerful. But the next part of the conversation is we ask about, hey, what is your life's vision? What is your dream for what your life is going to be like 3, 5, 10 years from now? how can I help you get to where you want to be in that dream? And that typically leads to a discussion about where are you in terms of your knowledge? Where are you in terms of your skills? Where are you in terms of your behaviors? And if you think about the way perhaps you speak to your own children, don't you think about when you speak to your children, hey, what would you like to do in life? And to do those things, we need to get you this education. We need to work on this skill set. We need to work on these behaviors. That's kind of the way you think about raising your children. And so
Yeah.
those are great conversations that help close that gap around performance. And if we have folks who aren't in the right role or maybe not even in the right company, because we can't coach them up to the level of performance that we need,
Right.
well, then it's okay to coach them out of the company and to a place in life that might be a better fit for them. It's actually the compassionate thing to do because we don't want people stressed and anxious about their performance at work. That is not fair. So it's
Right.
really better off to get people in positions where they can be successful. And that requires an ongoing conversation and relationship to help coach people to be where they're supposed to be in life.
You use the word coach quite a bit. It's my standard operating. I want to see that standard operating model everywhere in every culture. Tell me about the how you help them see themselves as a coach, because that one is it's such a unique position. I've been professionally coached for 20 years, and it was like, okay, how does this work? And then built that into the culture. So how did you build it in the culture, or how do you talk about it internally?
Yeah, we use lots of family analogies, like the parenting analogy. And, not everybody's got two parents who love them, or some people didn't have a teacher that believed in them, and some folks never had a coach that motivated them. Probably most people working or living on the planet really didn't have two parents or a great teacher or a great coach. So we want to be that parent, that teacher, that coach to help people along. And so we do a lot of training on that internally. Part of it is just having that discussion and talking about how to handle various situations that a leader may find among their team. And we're constantly working together to not, it just, a lot of people think, well, you've got one leader and that person is directly responsible for someone on their team. Okay, I believe in org charts, but I also believe that we're a team of leaders trying to help a team of folks that are on our team. You don't have to be alone, to your original question. When did you realize you're not alone in your leadership journey? We're trying to make sure our leaders don't feel alone. And so if they need help coaching a team member, yes, let's leverage all the resources we have internally to see what we can do to help this individual. And we're not the kind of company that just coaches somebody out, overnight. We
Yeah.
typically have a 90-day process where if something is going off the rails, we're all hands on deck trying to recover before we part company and coach someone out of the organization. So really it's about lifting people up and helping them become who they're meant to be. But there is a healthy dose of accountability because the only way you're going to get to high performance is, of course, to have some accountability for high level performance built into the organizational culture.
Yeah, it's the yes and model. You've got high expectations for accountability, but you've also got somebody saying, I want to get you there if you can. I want to get you performing at your highest level. I'm here for you. And I also want to know what you want in life so that I can help get there. And I've got a team of leaders around me that can help me help you. So let's do this thing. I think the two things that I hear, one is constancy of purpose, and it's a big purpose. I love your purpose statement there, and it allows for a long run. You can never exhaust it. You won't have to give it up because you could do it for the rest of your life and it wouldn't ever be completed. I hear that very clearly in your purpose. And then the second thing that I have seen in cultures where they're demonstrating your kind of performance, and literally 2x industry average operating margin at a 70-year company, 18% compound annual growth rate is stellar. So you're doing things extremely well. And the second thing is growth of humans. And so basically you're creating a growth path for every human inside of there by how you're talking about it and how you're aligning leadership around it. And you're saying, we're going to be the fastest place you can grow. And if you're not, we're going to help you get somewhere where you can grow faster because you're not here succeeding. So we need to get you somewhere else out of care and compassion for you. That's what I hear there. Powerful.
Yeah, That's exactly right. But one of the things we have to realize about the human condition is not everybody wants growth. Some folks really want to just go to work and check their brain 9 to 5 and kind of go through the motions. And that's okay. It just may not be a great fit for our culture.
Yeah,
We're a
because you've got a
culture.
growth culture.
We have a growth culture. And why? Fundamentally, why do we have a growth culture? Fundamentally, it's because we want to provide career growth opportunities to our team members. So we are a big career ladder organization. So we are constantly
Hmm.
showing people our career ladder in each function. So let's say an engineer starts at our company and they start in process engineering. Well, if they want to jump to product development, or if they want to jump to sales engineering, or if they want to go into quality control, we show them the org chart and the career ladder and all the different ways they could grow based on how their interests evolve, because we want them staying with us for their entire career. And we have very low turnover because we have growth options and we're constantly asking people, what do you want to do next? And okay, to do what you want to do next, here's what we need to work on in terms of knowledge, skills, and behaviors. So when you have the systems in place to have these conversations about human development, and you do it formally, and there's a system and a process to it, you've got a much better shot of it happening. And I think where a lot of companies fall down is it's not systematic. There's not a disciplined process in place. And so it happens randomly. And I see that with my own kids. If they graduate college and they go into the workforce and they work for these companies that you would think are just great companies, and some of them are, but very, very, very few companies, I'd say in my experience, less than 3% have a formal development process that applies to each individual, that's focused on trying to get the individual where they want to go as opposed to where the company wants them to go. There's a difference there.
Yeah, and it's the data shows that people leave individual supervisors instead of companies. But the reality, what I've seen in my exploration, is the 2%, the 3% that are running at a high level have more supervisors that are watching for growth and helping more grow. And they're doing it at a system level instead of at an individual level, that's relying all that weight on that supervisor knowing how to do that intellectually, skill-wise, leadership-wise. They're actually systematizing that just like they do their products and quality systems. And you're doing that at a high level. One thing for you, just a note, Gallup does a survey every year. 32% is the average employee engagement score across the US, and we're above most countries. So our autonomy, capitalistic market, free market economy does better than most. But 32% is you've got 2/3 of the workforce not working towards the overall goals, and 1/3 going, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to grow. Best practice organizations are at 72%. So if you just get leadership at a level where they're concentrating on the disciplines of human development, you can get up to 72%. World class is above 90%. Have you done any of your look like internally where you guys are at currently?
Oh yeah, we've been using the Q12 from the book First Break All the Rules for over 20 years. And we use what are called the Q12, and then we have our own force. We call it the Q12 plus four. But we just don't give surveys. What we do is we have listening sessions. So Connie Dooley and her team, Deidre Jonas and others, they go to each one of our facilities, and in small groups of 10 to 12 to 15 folks, we listen to them for 45 minutes to an hour. And then at the end is when we use the survey tool to help capture more depth and insight into how we can improve our culture. And the results are that we're on the Q12, we're in the low to mid 80s. Our net promoter score is one of the +4 that we add, and we're in the mid 80s there as well. Our professional regrettable turnover is less than 5%. We're probably running around 3%, something like that. But the most powerful thing we can do is listen, and listen at the individual level. And then after that listening, the second most important thing that we do is we take action. So we give everyone the results of the survey, and then we prioritize those results into the top 3 projects for that particular facility. And they do what's called a problem solving Kaizen event, or an A3. And all of this is public and shared, and we work on how we're going to improve the results based on the listening from our team members. And that's really powerful. It's the listening
Yeah.
in person. Yes, you put some data around the survey to help you quantify, but then the most important thing is after listening is having a system to solve the problems and drive improvement in the culture.
To help people actually see movement in the areas that they're struggling in so that they can get hope that it's better in the future instead of today is wherever it's at. 80+% is phenomenal. And it's the part that I love is you're never done with the culture work. And so there's room for improvement and there's new challenges ahead. And so I just think about if you think about these last 5 years, 10 years of leadership, and you think about a challenge that you guys have overcome, and have as a culture moved past it. Any that come to mind that feel like worthy of celebration that you'd love to share?
Well, there's been all kinds of successes. One of the things that we do quite a bit is we get involved in acquisitions. And in part, we acquire in order to provide growth opportunities for our teams. So as the company grows, and let's say we acquire a new company, then folks at the existing company can go work at the new location. People at the new location can come work at our other facilities, and there's a lot of synergies in that growth. But I cannot tell you, nothing has given me more pleasure than encountering a completely unhealthy company culture. We acquired a company that had been owned by private equity for 12 years, and it just destroyed an outstanding business, and the culture was just terrible. But once we were able to acquire them and put in our culture, we were literally transforming lives. It was just so neat to see what happens when you put in a humanistic leadership-based culture and how it can impact the lives of people who have been suffering under a less than ideal culture previously. And you just see these people blossom and their happiness goes through the roof. And you can just imagine that instead of coming home at night and kicking the dog because you had a bad day at work, they're coming home at night and they're embracing their wife and they're saying, hey, I had a great day. That kind of stuff is just so neat to be a part of. And we're just blessed to be able to have those kind of opportunities.
Well, it's really fun that you're actually expanding to the point. And I always say that you have to have excess leadership capacity to go acquire, or else you're irresponsible because you need actually capital to do it. But you also need leadership so that you can actually go and help support the transition. And for you to share that you get to do that in a healthy way and get to actually move culture upward instead of move costs downward as the only primary driver of value is just so fun to hear about. I do think about acquisitions. So how do you think through growth rate now, organic versus acquisition, and how you think about, or how you consider it, how you discuss it, how you think about where growth comes from and why?
Well, we've always had a drive for organic growth first. So we have to have a healthy and stable business model. If you think about taking care of others for the long term, you have to have a successful business model. So if you talk about Bob Chapman, who is a very humanistic leader and he's worried about taking care of his people, but he's doing that in the context of building a very healthy business model for the long term, because really you can't take care of people for the long term if you don't have a healthy, growing business model. And so first
100%.
and foremost, we must have a healthy core business that is very financially successful. And one thing that we're very, very happy about is sharing the benefits of our success with our ESOP members. So we've had a number of employees who have been able to retire now because of that ESOP account and the success of the business. So what we look at acquisition as an opportunity to accelerate growth even faster. And acquisitions allow us, for example, let's say there's an assistant plant manager at a given location, and he'd like to be a plant manager someday. Well, he understands our culture, and when we acquire a new company, we always want our leaders to go to the new location. So we bring our culture with those new leaders right off the bat. And so every acquisition provides opportunities for our team members to move to that new location and go up the organization and have a higher level role in the organization. And so we look at acquisitions as an opportunity to provide growth opportunities for our folks. And it's been very, very powerful. So we almost look at acquisitions, not necessarily just in terms of sales and profit growth, but as a people growth opportunity.
Yeah,
We can
opportunities for
provide,
people growth.
yeah, it's another way to allow upward mobility in the career of our leaders today.
Many who are listening might not have heard. For me, what you just described is profound. So you have to have organic growth solid, culture solid, and you have to be growing a solid business before you go acquire. Then when you acquire, you have to have leaders that are ready, which means that you have excess leadership capacity in that organic business to be able to deploy so that you can actually extend culture and that you can grow in a healthy way. And then you get to use that and leverage the acquisition as a growth opportunity for the people that are inside. So they're watching now, they're looking for acquisition opportunities because they know there's going to be opportunity for growth, not only business-wise, but personally and professionally. Steve, I mean, literally you could give a master's level course on that, just that 1 5-minute section there.
It's so powerful.
It really is countercultural, Steve, just so you know. Many, many, many leaders talk about acquisition or organic, and they're sitting there thinking, and they're like, well, we can't grow organically. We suck as a business right now. We're running everything poorly. Let's go acquire people. And you're like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to spend your money to go acquire people, and you don't know how to run your business yet? I'm like, culture first, solid organic growth, and then you can extend. And it's slower. It feels, quote, slower to do it that way. You have to be willing to decrease current rate of growth expectations that aren't real to be able to make that kind of investment. And you're doing it, Steve, as a family. Just love it. Really cool. If you were to go back to your younger self, I know you've got Rich there helping you, mentor you, and everything like that. It sounds like you've just built an incredible business. But if you're going to give your younger self advice, we've got a lot of young leaders that listen to this, aspiring CEOs that have stepped into their first role. They might be, they're leading teams for the first time. They're trying to figure out how to lead and do it well. What would you share with your younger self now that you know that you might not have known when you stepped in?
Well, you may remember Phil Williford. He was a great leader, ex-Special Forces and ex-Shingo Prize Award winner, so great operational excellence guy. When he joined us, I was what I'd consider a great individual contributor. I could do anything myself. I would work 70, 80 hours. If it needed to be done, I'd learn it, I'd figure it out, and I'd just put in more work. And what Phil taught me was the difference between management and leadership. I could manage a project, I could manage a process, but I was not a leader. I was probably too me oriented at that time. I was more concerned about my own personal performance than the well-being of others. And he really taught me the importance of leadership, of connecting and understanding others, and then focusing more on developing others than just outperforming individually. Learning the lessons of leadership are really, really difficult at an early age because you just don't have any context, or at least I did not have any context at age 25 or 30, and it took me a while to learn it. And one of the fun things I get to do now, Brian Wellinghoff of Barry Waymiller and I, Patricia Bagsby down at St. Louis University, we're teaching a class on leadership, on humanistic leadership down at St. Louis University. And I couldn't be more excited by the opportunity to now teach the things I wish I would have learned in business school. But back then they didn't have classes on leadership, and I didn't understand anything about leadership. And now I get the opportunity to go back and give back a little bit and teach folks about leadership.
I love it. Well, it's a lesson that I needed in my young leadership. I still need it today. It's a lesson that everybody that's listening needs, and that is to learn the lessons of and the power of leadership relationally, and the impact that it makes on you as a leader and the teams that you serve, that it can be more about we, than about my own personal performance. And so thank you so much for spending the time sharing with the folks that are listening, and for you that are listening, thank you for listening and for working your hardest to encourage others to do the same. If there's anything we can do, Steve is at the Gun Company. I know he's on LinkedIn. You can connect with him. If there's anything I can do to encourage you in your journey of leadership, please let me know. You can find me at encouragingleaders.com. And Steve, just really, really appreciate your time today.
Mark, I had a ton of fun. You are a man that serves others with everything you do in life, and so it's just neat to be a part of your life. And thanks for sharing all your leadership lessons with me.
Thanks, Steve.